Hello everyone and welcome to another Muffin video. Before we dive in here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell and drop a like on the video too if you're enjoying the content. Don't forget to join our Discord server as well if you're not already there. We've also activated our channel membership now, which comes with all kinds of perks from video shoutouts to personalized help and more. So check that out if you're interested in joining. And as well, a reminder now that all comments on every video will be automatically entered into our weekly giveaway, and winners will be randomly selected by our bot and announced every Monday. And finally, before we begin, just a quick shout out to Namzi from the official Muffin Discord. And with that said, let's get started on another trial video. That's right, it is time for us to go over the 13th trial in the game, which we've recently gotten a global first clear on. Let's jump in first, as always, and take a look at the skills of the Shadow Dune Breaker battle. So this fight, just like the previous trial, has two difficulties, and we'll be going over the risk difficulty here. The crisis is more or less the same, just more harder and higher stats requirement. So we'll be looking at the risk difficulty like I said, so let's start by taking a look at the abilities this boss has. So the Calamity Drake is actually, in my opinion, a very interesting fight. It has some unique mechanics that haven't really been seen in any other fight, and I really appreciate the devs putting in the effort to find new and interesting mechanics for us, the players. So let's understand how exactly this dragon works. So you can see here it doesn't have a huge amount of abilities, but it's very important that you understand how they work because it'll make or break the fight experience for you. So I'm going to actually skip this and I'm going to show you this ability down here, which requires an interrupt because it then will explain the true sight. So we're going to start with Toxic Storm. Toxic Storm is an ability the boss casts regularly, and when channeling, deal damage over time to random targets. After being interrupted, gain true sight. So for this fight, it's going to be yet another fight where both DPS are required to run their interrupts. So this is very important. You cannot have a single DPS running interrupt, nor can you have your tank or your healer running interrupt. It has to be both of your DPS because of an important mechanic. So True Sight allows you to see invisible units for 14 seconds, and there's a fatigue effect. If you gain this repeatedly within a 20-second period, the duration of True Sight is reduced by 14 seconds, which, as you can see, basically means you don't get it at all. So why would you need to see invisible units? The reason is because of this Sky Howl. When the boss uses the Sky Howl ability, raises its head and howls, summoning allies. Units with the True Sight effect can see lizards in the grass. So what does this mean? What happens is the mechanic of this boss is whenever it uses the Sky Howl ability, it summons invisible adds that deal a good amount of damage. And you cannot even see or target these adds unless you have this True Sight ability. Which means the way this fight is going to work is every time the boss uses Toxic Storm, your DPS are going to rotate back and forth using their interrupt in order to see the add that spawns and deal as much damage as possible to it. What we found worked for us when we did this fight, which I will explain as we go through the video, is actually saving Awakening in order to deal as much damage as possible when you have that True Sight effect active. So that's really the core mechanic of this fight that we're all going to be playing around, which is interrupts cycled back and forth by the DPS in order to see the invisible adds for a 14-second window and deal enough damage to kill them as fast as possible. But unfortunately, that's not the only effect, the only skills that this boss has, so there are other things you need to keep in mind. So the Dragon Devours is a damage resist requiring ability, which is a single target tank killer. So it opens its mouth and devours and deals massive damage to the current target, which should be the tank at all times. So this will require the tank to use a shield for sure. Whether or not you need additional defensives for this ability will depend on your party's power. This fight does have a pretty high power requirement compared to some of the other trials, like similar probably to how I believe it was T6 or T7, whichever the ice one was, had a very high power requirement, and this is going to be similar as well. The next ability is going to be Earth Shaking, which will require the healer to run a cleanse. So it slams the ground, dealing damage to all units, and each falling use of this skill increases damage taken by 100%. So the healer has to cleanse after the Earth Shaking ability, so healer should be keeping this in mind for the fight. And as well, you have the same Adventurous Plight, which started with the previous difficulty trial, which basically means your damage resist of the monsters is going to increase over time, and the healing you take was going to decrease over time, which just is an added difficulty. And there is the usual 8-minute Enrage timer on the boss. But honestly, with the damage output and the way the ads spawn, if you're lacking the damage to kill it in this Enrage timer, you'll die long before the Enrage timer because of the stacking damage. So that's pretty much this fight. It doesn't seem like that many abilities compared to some others, but with that said, it is like a pretty big gear check, and there's a lot to keep in mind. So without further ado, let's actually jump into the recording of the fight and see how this all works in practice. So let's take a look and understand what's all going on here. So as you can see, the first thing I do on the fight is I disable the automatic use of the awakening, which I didn't do in time. As you see, it's still cast anyway, but the reason I'm doing that is because I want to save my awakening when possible for the window with which I get the invisibility, the ability to see the invisible units, and use that to deal as much damage to the ads as possible. So Dragon Devours, you can see this is a single target tank killing ability. You can see how much damage it deals. So here we have a Toxic Storm. You can see just in that short window, look at this. Look at this in the short window, just how much damage it deals to the party before it gets interrupted. That's huge. I mean, that's why it's not only important to interrupt to see the ad, but if you don't interrupt this ability super quickly, it's going to wipe your party very, very quickly. Now, the one big issue that you're going to find, I'm going to jump back here, the one issue that you're going to find in the early game, you see this ability where he raises up and stamps down? The Earth Shaking is going to deal a heck of a lot of damage to your party in the early stages of progression on this fight, enough so that it might make it, in fact, almost impossible for you to deal with until you get enough straight up party defensive abilities to negate the effect of that stomp from basically wiping the party. So that's going to be one of your Earth Shaking. Look, I mean, if this is with our damage mitigation and everything active, if we didn't have that, I mean, this stomp was almost killing us in the beginning of progression here. So as you can see here, I got a super fast interrupt on this, and now I can see the ad here, and I've targeted it right away, and my awakening is available. I'm going to pop it now, or, well, I was going to pop it, but I guess there wasn't much time left on this ad in particular, so I decided to save it for the next one. So you can see here, oh, this was a long time to interrupt, and it almost killed the healer. So very important that you try to interrupt as soon as you see that interruptible bar. And like we said, we're cycling back and forth. So Natasha got the first one, then I got the second one, then Natasha got this one, and then the next one that shows up is going to be mine. I get the interrupt quite quickly there, and I can see the ad again, and this time I do pop my awakening. So the faster the ads die, the more stable this fight will be overall. So basically the fight will continue this way all the way through until 50%, and as you can see, another interrupt. Natasha got it this time, the next one is mine. So after 50%, there is one important change, which is that the boss actually starts spawning 2 ads with every roar, and not just one, or rather he roars twice. So that's going to be problematic, because you're suddenly going to have not only more than one ad, but it's going to be harder to kill them all in time, which means you're going to sometimes find yourself with not just 1 or 2, but sometimes 3, 4, 5, or 6 ads. So that can be very, very troublesome to deal with, and you just have to basically, whenever you gain invisibility as a DPS, you have to definitely immediately swap to the target that has the lowest HP as a priority. Don't target an ad with high HP, target one with low HP. That's going to be the best approach, because you want to kill them as quickly as possible. And if you just target and take the highest HP ad to half HP, then you're going to have 2 ads dealing a lot of damage, both at half HP, which is way worse than 1 high HP ad dealing damage and 1 dead one, if you see what I'm saying. So it basically keeps us up through the whole fight. Now, if your party has enough DPS, one strategy which you can do, and is what we basically did, is once the boss reaches 20% HP, we actually just ignore the ads completely and focus on interrupting and dealing damage directly to the boss. That might not be viable depending on your party's DPS output, but if you do find that you are getting enough damage out to the boss to kill it in time, that is one viable strategy. Otherwise, you would just keep the same pattern going throughout the fight, focusing the ads on each interrupt while you can see invisibility and fighting through like this. Now, like I said, from a tank and healing perspective, your tank really has to just be mindful of the Devour ability and have a shield available for that all the time, and the healer has a little bit of flexibility what timing for the barrier use. I would recommend probably running barrier for this, and we found occasionally that using the barrier for the Toxic Storm is actually quite useful because of the huge damage it deals. But anyway, that's the fight we got to clear here, and it was a very, very fun fight. Honestly, the swapping interrupts in order to see the invisible targets is a very nice idea for a fight, and found it a lot of fun. And there you can see the first clear pop-up. The first clear pop-up for beating the risk difficulty of this fight. And if I skip forward here, you'll see here we are showing up in the first finish part of the UI. So that's how this trial works. Hopefully you found this video useful, and it'll help you when you come to fight this boss as well. It's a very, very fun fight, but a fair warning, it is a massive gear check, not even from a DPS perspective, but from a defensive stats perspective. You're going to need a lot of defensive stats to not let that Earth Shaking AOE pretty much wipe your entire party each time the boss casts it. So there you have it. Hope you found this helpful, and best of luck with your clears on this T13 fight. And look forward to seeing your names on the leaderboards. So thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye now.